أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. It's a pleasure for me to start here this first lecture web site on my website and a live web live stream lecture here with you, inshallah, and we'll try to have this every month on the website to try to have a series of lectures. As I'm becoming old and traveling is quite difficult, and we have now new technology where we can get lectures, and you also can ask your questions straight away through the website. We'll try to do this and see how it goes. We are doing this in French, in English, and inshallah in Arabic. So in the three languages, bi'iznillahi ta'ala, we'll have this type of lectures on the website. This year, we decided to go for one topic. So it's a theme, and we'll have discussions and lectures around the concept of freedoms and liberations. So what are the paths of liberations, and in which we as Muslims, we have to understand the concept of liberations and the different paths and the different ways through which as Muslims we have to understand our Islamic references, but also our world and our societies, and in which we have to be involved in our societies to understand it. So it will be one topic with different ways of dealing with different angles when it comes to the concept of freedom and the concept of liberation. Liberty and liberations, these are, or liberties and liberations, these are this is the topic that we are tackling and addressing this year, inshallah. So once again, we are starting with and through the website. So if for the first time in English you see that the sound and the image or even the technology is not working, let us know. We'll try, inshallah, in the future to improve everything on the website, to improve the quality, to improve the substance, and to improve, bi'iznillah, also the way we are communicating. So through the website, and we'll see straight after this lecture we will have also this lecture put on the website, and for those who are unable to watch it live, they will be able to listen to it on the website afterward. Now, please don't send your questions straight away. Wait for half an hour. The lecture altogether is 40 minutes, and then we have 20 minutes, 25 minutes questions and answers. Of course, as you are too many and there are lots of questions, we'll try to take some of these questions to summarize them, or to go for something which is a kind of a questions by topics and try to address them. Now, if we come to our question today, and we talk about freedom, let me start with an introduction. Because when it comes to dealing with freedom, it's today a topic where the Muslims, with what happened with the uprisings in the Middle East and with what was happening with people calling for freedom, we were saying that the Muslim majority countries and the people in the streets who took to the streets were asking what? They were asking for dignity, they were asking for justice, and of course they were asking for freedom. But before even asking within our societies about freedom and calling for freedom, we need, from an Islamic viewpoint, to get a better understanding of the way we as Muslims we understand the concept of freedom, liberty, and also in which way we have to understand the processes through which we have to go, not only to reach freedom, to protect freedom, but also to go through processes of liberation. And I will come to this concept in a while, because I think it's an important one. Now, when we speak about freedom, we speak about something that very often in our discussion as Muslims, in interfaith dialogue, in intrafaith dialogue, among the trends in Islam, we are not tackling. And this is the concept of human being. And from the very beginning, we have it coming through different fields in the Islamic tradition. Of course, the fuqaha and the mufassirin, the people who were also dealing with commenting the Quran, explaining the Quran, were dealing with this concept. So we have from within the Islamic sciences, and when it comes to the fuqaha, the people who were, and the jurists, they were dealing with the scriptural sources, they were dealing with the rules, they were trying to speak about what is halal and what is haram, and our responsibility. Of course, they have to deal with freedom. We also have philosophers who were dealing with the concept of freedom to try to understand how do we define human beings and what is the difference, for example, between human beings, animals, and even angels, and we'll come to this as well. And the last field, and one of many, in fact, just to summarize here, is also the mystics and the Sufi tradition. And once again, Sufism, as we understand it, is based on the very essence of the Islamic teachings. We're not talking about the new waves and the new trends. I'm talking about the deep mystical Islamic tradition, which is indigenous, intrinsic to Islam, following the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ. They were also dealing with freedom and also the concept of liberation, to come close to God. Allah Azza wa Jal, and understanding in which way coming close to God is also something which is essential in the Islamic tradition. So if we come to the concept of freedom, and we understand the notion of freedom and the concept of human being, we understand here that we have to come to the very essence. And here we start with Surah Al-Baqarah. In Surah Al-Baqarah, we have two things that are very important. And we have not only Ibn Kathir, who was commenting the Quran, Al-Qurtubi, who was also commenting the Quran, Al-Razi, who was commenting the Quran. These are names in the tradition of commenting the Quran. But also we have fuqaha, people who are dealing with fiqh, and among them great scholars from the beginning. Al-Shafi'i, Ibn Hanbal, Malik were scholars, and among them also Sufyan al-Thawri also were scholars who were dealing with the concept of freedom. Why? Because they were talking about rules and the concept of responsibility. So we have scholars, Abu Hamid al-Ghazali in Ihya Ulum al-Din is also tackling this as something which is essential in our concept of human being. And if we come to the philosopher Al-Kindi, Al-Farabi, and then Ibn Sina, Ibn Rushd, Averroes, Avicenna, all these scholars, all these philosophers were also talking about the concept of freedom. And there is something which is common to all these traditions, and which can in fact summarize or be the embodiment of the Islamic understanding of what freedom is for us, dealing with the concept of human being. It's like there are two things that are essential in our understanding. The first one is the dignity of human being is based on what exactly? If you come to وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, we give dignity to human beings, to the all this filiation which is coming from Adam alayhi salam. The first thing which is important is, according to Ibn Kathir and others, is also very important here, has to do with his freedom. In fact, when it is asked to all the angels, God is asking all the angels to prostrate in front of Adam and asking them to prostrate. This understanding is based on the dignity of human being. Isjudu li Adam means there is something in Adam that you don't have. The angels are praying God, not out of freedom, but this is the essence. They are by essence praising God. While what we have when it comes to human beings, فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ, our freedom, the fact that we can decide to acknowledge that there is one God, La ilaha illallah, there is one God, or to deny this reality, which is the very meaning of kufr, which is to have his heart and his mind covered, and then denying the very existence of God, is one of the elements that are explaining why there is a difference of status and why God was asking the angels to prostrate in front of, to go in front of Adam alayhi salam. The second thing is also very important, which has to do with knowledge. وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. God taught Adam and then humanity al-asma, the names, meaning that knowledge, it's important. We know that at the beginning of Islam, everything is based on knowledge. On our understanding of that is very important when it comes to اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. اقرأ, read in the name of God who created you, your Lord who created you. The point here is that knowledge is the very beginning of our understanding of Islam. But from the very beginning, there is something which is our understanding, that there are two things that are defining our dignity. Karamat al-insan. The first is this freedom that we find in the fiqh tradition among the jurists, in the philosophical tradition among the Faylasuf and al-ilm al-kalam, and also with the mystical old Sufi tradition that are talking about this as something which is essential, because this is what defines a human being. So there is something here which has to do with our understanding of human being, that it has to do with our dignity. And then of course it's important because it's also connected to knowledge. And when it comes to knowledge, when it comes to our understanding of things, there is a connection between freedom and of course responsibility and knowledge. Why? Because in fact, al-jahl, ignorance, the very understanding of ignorance, where you are ignorant, ignorance in itself is a jail, is a prison. You are always imprisoned by ignorance, and in order to be free, you need knowledge. So the connection between knowledge and freedom is essential here. No knowledge, no freedom. Ignorance means a contradiction in terms with freedom, where we are talking about this. And this is why, for example, in our societies today, when we see people saying, I reject religions, I don't believe in anything, that's fine. It's a decision. If and only if you take this decision based on your knowledge, that you know what you are talking about. But being ignorant about your religion and say, I reject my religion or religions or spiritualities without knowing, it's not a choice. It's just a decision based on ignorance, and as such it has nothing to do with true freedom. So as I was saying, and this is also something which is very important, and for many of our young children and students in Muslim majority countries as well as in the West, we have to be very clear on that when, for example, you disagree with something on biology or on anything which is said in philosophy, you can't just deny and say, okay, I don't want to listen to this because it's against my religion. No. In Islam, you take a decision, you analyze, you listen, you study, and then you take a stand. You don't deny something by saying, I don't want to listen to this. That's not the way we are good Muslims. Islam means deep understanding, deep faith. And with a good, the right understanding, you have a deep faith. But ignorance and rejecting knowledge as a protection of faith is doing exactly the opposite. No protected faith with the promotion of ignorance among us and within our societies. So having said that now, and understanding the concept of life and why we have to connect that there is with knowledge, something which is a very important notion in Islam, is the notion of responsibility, taklif. And this is why, for example, we have also something which is important, which is quite different from the Christian tradition and what was taught for centuries in the West. In Islam, the beginning of everything is innocence. Our children, the young boys and young girls, until they reach the age of reason, are completely innocent. And then they become responsible. They become responsible with something, which is the decision, which is the faculty, which is on which freedom and responsibility is going to be, in fact, relying on and connected to. It's our conscience. In Islamic term, when we speak about conscience and this relationship to God, we say taqwa. in philosophical term, we say a damir, which is the conscience that we are a subject. I can say I can take a decision, I can move my hand, I can think, I can reject, I can accept, I can acknowledge. With my conscience starts my responsibility, and with my responsibility, I connect my responsibility to knowledge, and with knowledge and responsibility is the way I deal with my freedom. Now, this is a very important thing that we have to connect the three notions here, because it's not always clear. The sense of guilt that we sometimes nurture in the Islamic societies today is not, in fact, something which is rooted in our tradition. And we have to be very cautious with this. يسألونك ما أحل لهم قل أحل لكم الطيبات. There is something which is very positive in Islam when they are asking what is permissible for us, everything which is good for you. So the first attitude that we have towards the world is a positive side. It's not everything is haram. It's not prohibition. No, it's permission. And permission means open your mind, open your eyes, look at the world in a positive way, and know that your freedom is the first thing that you have, which is helping you to grow, to live in this world, and to deal with the realities of this world. So with this very important positive concept of human being based on innocence, knowledge, and freedom, we have something else which is going to be also important. And we find this among the scholars when it comes to a very important thing. When we judge, and the judgment is on what? In fact, human beings are innocent and then responsible. And the fact that our ethical judgment is not on the being, is on the action. So when we speak about al-ahkam al-taklifiyya, for example, we say that something is wajib, that it's an obligation, or something which is haram, which is a prohibition. In between you have al-mustahab, what is preferred, al-makruh, what is necessary. It's still possible to do it, but it's not good, it's to be avoided. And then al-mubah, it's in the world of human actions, al-ibaha, it's an asl, it's the principle, it's the first principle, al-asl fil ashya al-ibaha. So the first principle in our way of dealing with life is, in fact, permission when it comes to social affairs. This is not the case for two fields, al-aqidah, which is based on the creed, it's based on the 6 principles of faith, and then also al-ibadat, which has the rituals, the 4 practical dimension of our way of dealing with, or responding to Allah's call, to God's call, by praying, fasting, the pilgrimage, and the zakat, in the wrong order, but these are the 4 pillars added to ash-shahada, that we testify that there is only one God, and that the last messenger, peace be upon him, is the last messenger, and that he came with a message and a mission. Now, if we come to this and we understand that our understanding of al-ahkam al-taklifiyya is, in fact, we are qualifying not the human being, we are qualifying the actions. So when we say that something is haram, something which was done is haram, it's very important. Why? Because in fact we have options, and we have a conscience, and we have knowledge, and we understand how we have to deal with this, and then we know that things are halal and things are haram, lawful and unlawful, permissible, preferable, or detested. So we deal with this, and then when we have to judge something, we judge the actions, not the being. And it's important. You may have done something haram, but you are not haram yourself. You are a being, and through the process of your innocence, your responsibility, your asking forgiveness, this could be changed. And every time you go to this kind of purification of your heart, it might be that you have done something out of your freedom, something which is bad. But because it's not you who are going to be judged as bad in yourself, it means that the whole process, the whole understanding of freedom is also a projection onto the action and not a definition of the being. Very important this. Very important because it means that everything is possible. And this is why we have the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, this guy who killed 99 people and then went to the scholar and asked him, I killed 99 people, am I going to be forgiven? And said, no, he killed even the scholar. And then with all this, killing 100 people and then coming out of his freedom, seeking forgiveness, and he's forgiven. Because the actions are bad, not the being. And there is always hope for the being as long as there is conscience, taqwa, piety, and this kind of loving reverence towards Allah, towards God that could come anytime. We don't know. So there is always hope with this understanding of freedom. It's heavy. What does it mean? It means that the Quran that is coming to you, it's a heavy message. It's heavy. Why? Because you have a conscience, you have knowledge, and you have to deal in the light of what is prescribed to you. So you have to deal with it. It's a heavy message. But still, with this heavy message, there is hope because He's Ar-Rahman. Ar-Rahman علم القرآن خلق القرآن. So the gift of this revelation is to give us, with this freedom, the way of finding our way. This is something which is essential. So this is the qualification here, has to do with the qualification of the action, and we understand here that freedom has to do with this, has to do with this dimension, and it has to do with our understanding. It's the action that we are talking about here. Now, there is something also that we have to add, and when it comes to talking about freedom, there are different types of freedom. In fact, we can think of a typology of freedoms or liberties in order to come to the very deep understanding of what it means, liberation for human beings. Because it's a very positive understanding of our nature, that our spirituality is to liberate ourselves from our nature. Not because our nature is bad, but it's positive if we understand how to deal with it. And it becomes negative if you remain imprisoned into one's nature. So we need to understand how we take our nature as a positive starting point. But it should be a starting point. It should be a process, because our nature needs nurture. Our nature needs education. Our nature needs liberation, because our nature is based on freedom. To deal with our freedom, to reach our own liberation. How? The first dimension here is in the way we understand ourselves. Our nature is based on وَنَفْسٍ وَمَا سَوَّاهَا. Allah created our being with tensions. فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. He just inspired into this being its liberation, the purification, the good, and also its distraction. What is going to the good as well as the bad. There is something in us which is these two: aspiration towards what is good and attraction towards what is bad. This is what we find in the Quran. When, for example, we come to this understanding, زُيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ حُبُّ الشَّهَوَاتِ, there is something which is a seduction into desires, into our emotions, into anything which has to do with our instincts. It's attractive. And we see this today. The global culture is very much based on what? Nurturing emotions, entertainment, attractions, our instincts. So we are attracted. But on the other side, there is also something which is the natural attraction, yearning towards transcendence and what is good. فطرة الله التي فطر الناس عليها. Ibn Ashur is building all his understanding of مقاصد الشريعة based on الفطرة. الفطرة is this natural yearning towards transcendence, towards God. ولكن الله حبب إليكم الإيمان وزينه في قلوبكم. ولكن الله حبب إليكم الإيمان. He makes it, you love this faith. And زَيَّنَهُ, He beautified it in your heart. So we have the two. We have this attraction and this aspiration and attraction towards, and we find this with poets, many poets and artists are always talking about these two dimensions. This is our inner tension. So between the two, you have to deal with your freedom. What are you going to decide? What are you going to choose? Where are you going? Where are you heading? What is the path? What is the way? Is Sharia is the way. What is the very understanding of Sharia is the path, the way towards the source, coming back to God. And God is telling us, you have to decide. You have to take a stand. Not to decide, not to choose is to choose. If you say, oh, I don't want to choose, I follow my nature, it's a choice, because your nature is not always good. Not everything is good in your nature. Nature is positive as long as you master your nature. Nature is positive, and you make it positive with your choice, with your mind, with your conscience, with your taqwa. Taqwa, said the Prophet ﷺ. So now, when we come to this understanding here, when we understand this very and deep understanding of freedom here, is to take a stand between these two polarization that we find, that our self, inna an-nafs la'ammaratun bis-su', so our self, our being, it's imposing unto us, and what we want is to get to this, what we find in Surah Al-Fajr, Ya ayyatuha an-nafsu al-mutma'inna, that what we want is to be at peace. In fact, the right management of your freedom should go towards your inner peace, intimate peace, to deal with your intimate war and tensions to get that peace. So your conscience as the damir, consciousness, your mind, your intellect should be involved in taking the best decisions out of freedom to go from tension towards peace. What does it mean? What is this? This is spirituality. This is kunu rabbaniyin. So you are imbibed by this relationship to God, this relationship to the One, this relationship to La ilaha illallah, by nurturing. And this is why, wa'alamu, and this is why, look, you have it in the verse here. يا أيها الذين آمنوا استجيبوا لله وللرسول إذا دعاكم لما يحييكم. Oh, you who have faith, who attain to faith, respond to the call of God and His messenger when they call you to what gives you life. But respond, what does it mean? Respond means use your freedom. Be free, know your freedom, and respond to the call. And know that the knowledge of God, I said knowledge at the beginning, I said knowledge and freedom. The knowledge of God is where? Between you and your heart. Come back to your heart. And this is why you will get that peace. So no peace without freedom, and no understanding without freedom, and no freedom without understanding, and no way of managing your freedom if you are not having as an objective inner peace. And no inner peace without the right management, the right understanding, the deep understanding of the way you deal with your freedom, with your mind, with your heart, with yourself. So this is one dimension, this is one type, and one of our lectures in the coming months will be about this understanding of how do we deal with this. And then we understand here that not only we talk about freedom here, but we talk about liberation. The liberation of the self. Why? Because here, when you come back to your heart, you understand al-nafs, al-ammara, this imposition of your ego on yourself, you need to liberate yourself from that. No peace without liberation from your ego, because the ego is the first jail, is the first prison. So this is what we understand here when it comes to our understanding of Islam, that the first type, within a typology of freedom, there is this spiritual freedom, this peace which is connected to knowledge, which is connected to freedom. And what we are expected to do as human beings is to try to get that peace using our freedom in the light of our knowledge and our relationship to God. Because the knowledge of God, the knowledge of the One, is between us and our heart. And we understand here that it's the way you use our freedom to remember, that we get this tranquility, this calm while you remember. So in the way you use your mind, in the way you have the freedom to forget, and you have the freedom to remember. So this is Islam. This is the very understanding of entering into God's peace. Having said that, now if we come to another dimension of freedom, after having spoken here about the freedom of being, because this is what we are talking about, and we understand the connection. No freedom of our being and with our being if we don't get this kind of understanding of our liberation, the liberation from our ego to get this peace as Muslims. Now, there is another dimension that we have also to discuss, is if I want to get this intimate peace, I have, so it means here that it's the peace that I'm talking about here, it's the peace of my heart. But in Islam, what is also important is to get this peace of your mind. And if you remember what the scholars were saying, if you remember what, for example, Abu Hanifa, Malik, for example, Malik was very strict on that. And saying, look, if I say something, if I give you a legal opinion, a fatwa, if I give you an understanding of, and this is not right, or you find that it's not right in the light of the Quran or Sunnah, the prophetic tradition, reject that. What does it mean? It means not only you have the right to ask, but you have the duty to check. And here we are talking about what exactly? We are talking about something which is sometimes, not sometimes, too often missing in our Muslim majority countries, is the freedom to think. The freedom even to ask questions. No education if I don't have the freedom to question. No education if I don't have the freedom to question the questions. If you are a teacher, the best students that you can have are the students not only to try to understand or respond to your questions, but who question your questions by saying, it might be a wrong question, by the way. And very often in our discussion with other civilizations or with dominant civilizations, we answer questions just too quickly, without understanding that we need to think, that we need to question the questions in here. It's important to get it right as a Muslims, where for example, we have this discussion between Nimrod and Ibrahim alayhi salam, that there is a discussion. What does it mean? It means that really there is here something which has to do with arguing. And when Musa alayhi salam is in front of the magician, say, Alqu, just come with your arguments, I'm going to respond. But Alqu, they are asking him, do you want us to give you our arguments, which is this magicians, what they had? No, come. So first, when you want to have this freedom to think, the freedom to express, to think and to say, it's something which here has also to do with our understanding of the deep understanding of Islam, the deep understanding of what education is all about. Unfortunately, in our societies today, it's too often neglected, not the right way to deal with our education. So what I want here to say is that we need to get this knowledge right when we are talking about ignorance and the right to question Very often we have in Western schools students who can ask questions, who come to the mosque, no question. We come to the Muslim majority countries, no question. We are dealing with government sometimes and powers, no question. You just have to deal with something which is completely the opposite. The Prophet ﷺ, when we are talking about shura, amruhum shura baynahum, what does it mean? Amruhum shura baynahum, that they are consulting. So how come we can just have a principle which is saying it's a consultation, a deliberation? What does it mean? Come with your opinion. And we have, for example, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu and Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. They didn't agree. They were both companions, but they didn't agree. And they were able to think. And it's the quality of their thinking without the Prophet ﷺ that made them afterward the right people to lead the community. Why? Because they were able to think by their own, and the best teachers are those who are helping their students to think without them, not like them. So this is exactly what the Prophet ﷺ, when it comes to religion, we follow, sami'na wa ata'na, we follow, we obey, we have heard and we obey. But now the critical thinking here, it's very important. So this is also something which is, the liberation means that the way we think with our mind, we have to liberate ourselves from what? From our emotions, from our ignorance first, and then from our emotion, from the community pressure that sometimes we think because the community thinks like this, but it might be wrong. It might be wrong even among scholars, that we might have a majority of scholars who are saying something, and one scholar who might be right against the whole majority. Why? Because truth is not about the number. Truth is about the argument. So this is where we need to have this critical thinking. Freedom of expression is Islamic by definition, and we should be able to come with this as part of what we are connecting. It's freedom of thinking, of thought, and freedom of expression. The two are connected, and this is where we need this kind of liberation from ignorance and from the community pressure. We are not asked to think like all the others. We are asked to think by ourselves, and if it's right, it's right. If it's wrong, it's wrong. But if my community is wrong, if my community is unjust, I should be able to stand up and to say that's wrong. That's not what. And the scholars who made history, the scholars that we are celebrating today, are those scholars who were able to say no when all the people were saying yes. Were saying yes, 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 master, yes, prince, yes, king, yes, rais. Look at what is happening in Muslim majority countries today, that there is something wrong in the whole process. So here we have also freedom, liberties that we are talking about, and liberation from many dimensions also. There is also something which is the direct consequence, is freedom of action. And this is where, for example, in Muslim majority countries, as well as in the West, we should be able to act, should be able to do whatever we think is right. Of course, there are rules. Of course, there is a legal system, but freedom of action, freedom of connected with our understanding. الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, those who believe and do good deeds are people who should be free to do so. So how can we talk about freedom where we live in so many dictatorships, so many countries where we are claiming to be Muslims and promoting an Islamic system, and it's all about no critical thinking, no freedom of expression, and no freedom of action. And I think that this is where we need to come with something which is essential in our understanding today. And freedom of action is also a way where we need to deal with the concept of liberation, because the way we act is to say freedom of action is to do what I want. It's to be free to act as I want. But there is a question here. And especially in times of globalization, where, for example, the power of psychological means are sometimes pushing you to act, and you think that you are acting the way you want, but you are not sure that you want what you want, because the power upstream of, psychological means. And even, you go to a supermarket, and sometimes the music is enticing you. It's attracting you towards, oh, buy, be a consumer, and you think that you act with your freedom, and you are in fact driven into something which is a superficial freedom. So we also have to think about this, the liberation of this psychological pressure sometimes, when it comes to entertainment, when it comes to fashion, when it comes to the massive power of communication, of mass communication now, is making us act as the others, as our peers, as our peers in schools, or our fellow students and fellow citizens, and we act as the others. So the courage, the liberation from the judgment of the others, of what they are doing, and say, okay, I want to do it as I want. I want to dress as I want. I want to think as I want. I want to isolate myself from this mainstream fashion movement, or fashionable movements, or anything which is like that. We need to come to this understanding, and this is also has to do with the understanding of freedom of action. Let me add one thing, one dimension in our world. I'm talking about this because for those of you who live in Europe or around the world, we see that. We see that we have migrants today who are facing death. Lampedusa is an example for Europeans, but we see this in Gulf states. We see this in Asia, where too many people are dying because as migrants they are not respected. There is no dignity, so they can face dictatorships, torture, or poverty, or mistreatment in their country of origin. So sometimes they move because they want to survive, and they find a new type of slavery, they find torture, and sometimes they find nothing. They find countries that are now building a kind of virtual wall around European countries, Asian countries, Gulf states, in order to protect our richness, our wealth. We let the people die. There is something which is called freedom of movement. And this is something that we find in the Quran, Ardullahi wasi'a, that the earth of God, God's earth is vast. And we need to be able to find protection. Protection from dictators, protection from poverty, protection from any kind of oppression. And we are not doing this. We are now putting borders, creating walls, and there is no real freedom. In fact, money is freer than man, human beings. Financial power, it's very easy now. You have money coming, millions, billions of dollars and euros and whatever, just moving around the world. Money. But human beings, let them die. And when it comes to this, as Muslims, we should understand that there is something that we have to deal with, because freedom of movement is important, and we have to liberate ourselves from this understanding that, look, I'm a citizen in this country, and all the people who are residents or migrants, and they have less dignity than my dignity. That's not possible. That's not the right way of dealing with our understanding of freedom. And we have to liberate ourselves from the wrong legal structures and legal discrimination sometimes. Because it's all good to say citizens are equal, but what about human beings? What about the free human beings? What about this new type of slavery? And slavery is the opposite of freedom. So we have to liberate ourselves from this system And there is something which has to do with liberation in the name of our dignity, in the name of our knowledge, in the name of our common humanity. So we can't just celebrate human rights, and when it comes to this, just go and cry for the people who are dying in Lampedusa. And some of them, when they survive, they are put in jail because they are illegal, undocumented. This is the legal systems that we are promoting. And as Muslims, it's the same in Muslim majority countries. I'm not here blaming the West. I'm blaming the world. In fact, and Muslims are involved in this exactly the same way in Gulf states, in Asian countries. Just go there, look what is happening with Indian people from Sri Lanka, from Indonesia, from whatever, Pakistan, Bangladesh, African countries, exactly the same. No dignity, and it has nothing to do with our religions. And this is why Muslims, if we are true to our ethics, we have to stand up. We have to stand up and we have to liberate ourselves in the name of this freedom of movement, which is not only movement of money, it's movement of beings, human beings, with their dignity and with their, not only themselves, but sometimes also their family. How come we can just welcome someone and say, you will be far from your family for 3 years? And we want to have people who are psychologically stable? That's not possible. So all these together, we can see here that we have many types of freedom. I was talking about freedom of being, freedom of thinking, freedom of expression, and freedom of acting and action within society, and then freedom of movement, which is not exactly the same. So there is a typology here, and when we come to Islam, we understand that this is rooted, and this is why some of the people who were coming after the Arab risings, that I never called revolutions, I never called the spring, I saw this from the very beginning as something that is very, very worrying, and I was cautiously optimistic. But many of the leaders were saying, be careful, even when we come to the Islamic reference, we should start with freedom. Freedom is the starting point of everything when it comes to humanity and human beings. So as Muslims, we also have to come to this as something which is a positive take and a deep understanding of the Islamic tradition on this, not only from the juridistic the legal side, but also the philosophical, the mystical side, and all together, freedom of the self, freedom of the mind, freedom of the being, freedom of the citizen, freedom of the migrants. All this together should be part of our discussion today. Now, having said that, and coming to my conclusion, as an introduction to this topic, and this is what I wanted you to understand, I would say, as the last 3 points that I wanted to make as a conclusion, is from the very beginning in the spiritual tradition and in Islam, when we speak about freedom and liberation, there is something that we have always to ask. If I say I want, I decide, I want to do this, we need to ask the question from a spiritual side, but also social side, cultural side. Am I deciding? Is it I who is deciding? So, to be a subject, the subject of his or her history for human being, for their history for society, who decides? It's an essential question. And how? So it's both a question about who and how. The procedure is also important here. And we have to talk about this as part of liberating ourselves from alienation. And there is something which is undermining the very essence of freedom, is alienation. When you think of yourself through the eyes of the others, or when somebody else is deciding for yourself. And this is where we need to talk about humanity and the common status, because based on freedom also it's this understanding the common dignity of human beings, black and white, north and south, rich and poor. This is something, اعدلوا وأقربوا للتقوى, اعدلوا, be just. This is closer to this God consciousness. So اعدلوا, justice, it's part of this understanding of unfortunately many people, many Muslims are talking about freedom, and sometimes it's the freedom for the white, freedom for the rich, freedom for the powerful, not freedom for humanity and human beings. So we need to talk to this. And then comes another discussion, which is part of what I'm tackling in two of my books, in fact, the Radical Reform, Islamic Ethics and Liberation. Liberation is in the subtitle, but also the quest for meaning, developing a philosophy of pluralism where we need to get the objectives. Why do we want to be free, and what are we going to do with our freedom? Because it's not enough to celebrate freedom without coming to a deep understanding of what we want to achieve when it comes to this freedom. So this is why here we need to come to something which is a deep understanding of what freedom is all about and the objectives. When it comes to education, the very meaning of education is to be autonomous. So there is a connection between freedom and autonomy. So autonomy is important. Education and autonomy are important. And then also active citizens, understanding duties and rights, and then serving, and then trying to be within the society as somebody who is contributing. So all these objectives and maqasid has to be elaborated in a way which is helping us at different levels for all these different types of freedom to be set and clarified as something which is important when it comes to responsibility and objective. Having said that now, and we understand that when we are promoting freedom and we are talking about contribution and autonomy, we understand also that in all what I said right now, we need to resist. We need to resist our ego. We need to resist the bad dimensions within the society. We need to resist dictatorship. We need to resist alienation. We need to resist wrong understanding of what freedom is all about. So there is no freedom without this deep understanding of our destiny as human beings and resistance to everything that could undermine freedom in our lives. So, as I said at the beginning, there is no freedom without knowledge, and no knowledge without consciousness, and consciousness is helping us to manage freedom. But at the same time, because we are managing freedom, we understand that we have to resist. There is always resistance. And resistance is not a negative term. Resistance is what makes us human beings. We resist ignorance with knowledge and education. We resist alienation with freedom and autonomy. We resist dictatorship with a call for dignity and justice. We resist human beings in the name of the humanity of human beings and in the name of the creator of human beings. These are all dimensions that we have to ponder over, and this will be, inshallah, for this year, all the topics that I will try to tackle with you every month through different lectures, tackling different issues, inshallah. That's the end for now. You have questions. I see that there are questions coming. So give me 2 minutes just to be able to read the question. And I want to thank my assistant in this work, Ubaida, who is working with me on that, just to get the question. And inshallah, I will respond to the question I have. Give me just, please, 1 minute and just to try to collect these questions, inshallah. So these are some questions that I have now, and just trying to read them, and how freedom of religion has been implemented in the first Islamic state governed by our beloved Prophet ﷺ, and why our Prophet ﷺ agreed to make war. So these are very interesting questions, in fact, because what we are dealing with here is the understanding of the very beginning. In fact, when it comes to freedom of religion in Islam, not only there is a freedom of conscience and freedom of acknowledging that there are many religions. What we have in Islam is وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَجَعَلَكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً. If God had willed, He would have made you one community. ولكن ليبلوكم فيما آتاكم. In fact, it's all based on testing us in what He gave us. ولو لا دفع الله الناس بعضهم بعض لفسدت الأرض. If God had not made a set of people competing with a set of other people, the world would have been corrupt. And more even than that, there is this understanding of ولو شاء ربك لآمن من في الأرض كلهم جميعا فأنت تكره الناس حتى يكونوا مؤمنين. If God had will, He would have made all the people believe. So it's not for you to impose this onto him. And this is why at the beginning He was acknowledging the right of the Jews and the right of the Christians to practice their religion. At the beginning it was based on monotheism, and straight with years it was also acknowledged for other communities and spiritual communities in the region. So all what is said today very often about the fact that the Prophet ﷺ, peace be upon him, was against the Jews and there is something intrinsic in Islam against Judaism, that's completely wrong. Yes, there were tribes that were trying to attack the Muslim community and to destroy it, and also Christian tribes, and also even pagan tribes. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, everything which is based here on the first wars was based on resisting oppression and resisting people who wanted to destroy. But while he was at war with some tribes and some Jewish tribe or Christian tribes and others, he also was protecting, afterward he protected Jewish tribes in the north of the peninsula. So everything which is based on this assumption that between Islam and Muslims and Jews there was war from the beginning, and not protection and not acknowledgement. No. هم من أهل الكتاب. They are people of the book. And when the Prophet, peace be upon him, arrived in Medina, he acknowledged the fact that they were Jews, and هم من أمتنا, they are part of our community, and he gave them the same rights. So we need to understand that from the very beginning. So anti-Semitism, by the way, is anti-Islamic. Nothing. It's like this. It's not at all acceptable, and we have to make clear. Now, as to the wars, it was very often, because at the beginning with this new religion, it was not accepted. So some tribes wanted to destroy the Muslim community, and he was resisting. And he made this even when he arrived in Medina, by making clear that the first wars that he had with the people of Mecca he was only involved in Muhajirun, so the people who left, in fact, Mecca, because this was they were taking their goods in Mecca, so this was retaliation against us. But in fact, this was never a war to impose religion, but to resist oppression, which is completely opposite. So we need to get a better understanding of that. So there are other questions here. It seems like many Egyptians are satisfied with their status and with their leadership will take them. Is it not in our nature to seek freedom? Do they believe they are already free? So good question about what is happening now. What is happening in Egypt, of course, is disappointing. And while I have been writing about what was happening in the last 2 or 3 years, and I have been critical of the trends, and even, supporting, of course, the people when they were demonstrating, and the starting point, the 25th of January, 2.5 years ago, of course, supporting that, but not being naive, and also critical of some of the decisions that were taken by the President Morsi and even the government. But this doesn't make acceptable. The fact that you are supporting a military coup with this army and what was done and killing innocent people, that's not acceptable. So it's very worrying to see people taking to the street and supporting an army which is now even worse than the army in the time of Mubarak. In fact, the whole process was an internal coup d'etat and some military taking positions that they didn't have before. So yes, it's all about calling for freedom now. The problem sometimes, and this is why I said no freedom without knowledge, is that we need to understand the context. We need to understand what is happening with no naivety, because we can think that this is out of freedom. So the people who are calling the army to come, let's just do this. Can they see what is happening now? So I would say that here we have a problem. So there is no way of supporting the army. There is no way of supporting someone who, like a Sisi, who has ordered to kill so many innocent people, and now he's judging the people of killing while he was the one who decided to kill. Not acceptable. This cannot be anyone who is a Democrat, even if he's against the Islamists or against, as I was critical, I think we can't. That's simply not possible, and we have to condemn that. And this is why I'm saying when it comes to freedom, we need to come to something which is a deep understanding. Now, where would be the starting point of Islamic reform in Muslim majority countries in the face of stringent culture and lack of freedom of speech? That's the good point, and I think that if we look at the Muslim majority country, what we have to do today is very much first to take a position of principle. And the position of principle is to say freedom is the starting point of everything from an Islamic viewpoint. We cannot compromise. That's the starting point. And now freedom has conditions. The first one is about education. So any society which is not providing people with basic education and civic education is not acting in the name of protecting their freedom, and this is what we have to say. Now we also have to be clear about political freedom and all the types of freedom. It's also based on knowledge, because with no knowledge, no freedom. No knowledge, no freedom. That's clear. And then social justice. It's also so we need to go step by step, but we need to have a civil society. We need to have men and women who are not stopping to be naive and no, I'm sorry. Freedom is not to be able to go on Facebook. It's not to be able to go on Twitter. These are only instruments, and they can alienate the minds of people. And we also have a problem of freedom in Western society. So this is where we need to be very clear on the fact that we need to act against this type of superficial freedom and come to a better understanding of what it should be. So steps and also a civil society that is working and being able to acknowledge that we need more involvement from men and women. One of the main reasons why the Arab countries restrict freedom of expression is because it would give people the yardstick to criticize fundamentals aspect of the religion. What do you think about this? That's a good point, and I think that we need to have this type of discussion. We need to let the people ask questions. It's not by imposing religion by ignorance. It's imposing dogmatic minds. It's imposing dogmas. It's not going to work like this. Islam is not going to be accepted out of imposition. Islam is going to be accepted out of understanding, al-fahm, out of freedom and out of questions and answers. So this is why we should not be scared of questions. The only people who are scared of questions are people who are instrumentalizing religion for their power, which is the case in many countries today. When we are instrumentalizing religion to keep power, you are afraid of questions. But if you are understanding Islam, if you understand what Islam is all about, you are not scared of questions. All the people who are scared of questions are in fact protecting their power. But the people who are welcoming questions are the people who are acknowledging the supreme power of God. acknowledging the fact that our powers are relative powers. And this is what we have to repeat to people. And we need to understand that this resistance to people who are trying to protect their power, it's a duty. How is liberation from ego achieved? We'll come to this. This will be inshallah, I hope. إذا بقي شيء من العمر إن شاء الله, if we are still alive next month, this will be one of the topic that we will discuss. You said truth is not about number, it's about argument. What about ijma? That's good. Ijma, when we have to be try to go with logical. Even the ijma of the Sahaba, even the ijma of the ulama, it might be that with time we understand that this was wrong. So ijma at-tam, it's a probability that we were close to truth or close to what is right, but it might be wrong. And it might be that for the time being, in one situation, the majority was right, or the majority won, but it was not right. Remember, the Prophet ﷺ in Ghazwat Uhud, he didn't want to leave the country. He wanted to welcome the city. He wanted to welcome the people, and all the young who were not in Ghazwat Badr, they wanted to fight outside, and they won because they were in majority. In fact, they won, but they were right. They were wrong, and the Prophet ﷺ lost, but he was right. Sometimes it happened. This is history. Now we need to be reasonable and to deal with what we have, the means that we have, and the only means that we have when it comes to a decision process is to go with the majority when it comes to politics, when it comes to social issues, when it comes even to fatwa, legal opinions. But it might be that in history, one who was against the majority was wrong. Sufyan al-Thawri about Hukm al-Ridda had an opinion that Hukm al-Ridda was not right because the Prophet ﷺ didn't make it. Now, many scholars are coming back to him. I myself, 25 years ago, said this might be the best opinion because if you come back to the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, you find that he never killed someone because he or she left his or her religion. So he had an opinion which was a minority opinion, and it might be that he was right in this discussion. There is no final answer to this, and this is why we have to be very humble and very also cautious. It's not because we are in number that we are right. Assalamu alaikum. Is it possible to talk about freedom without talking about a reference point? Yes, of course. And I was talking about revelation. I was talking about the way we are talking and coming back to our reference. And also about something that we find with scholars in Islam that we're always talking about if there is responsibility, there is freedom. But if you look you come to Western philosophers like Rousseau and Kant, you find that they were saying there is no freedom if there are not limits. You experience freedom with limits, and the limits becomes your reference point. So I think that this is a fair question. It's a good one, and I will talk about this when it comes to the legal dimension of freedom. Do you think it's good on Islam to vote? Because I will never vote, because that's changed nothing. Yes, it's good to vote, and we are not only thinking about the result, we are thinking about principles. And it's very important in Western countries and Muslim majority countries to be involved in social affairs, to have an opinion. And even though you vote without getting a change within the society, it helps you to be connected to your society, to feel, to contribute. And we need now to get something which is important, to understand that we have to contribute. We are talking about contribution, we are talking about responsibility. We're not only talking about rights, and many Muslims are